What happens when control masquerades as safety? When aesthetic perfection becomes more important than survival? You think you live in a civilized society until someone like Karen, backed by the HOA, decides that fire hydrants ruin the view, and then the clubhouse burns. Not metaphorically, literally. So I ask you, was it negligence, or was it something deeper, a reflection of how we sacrifice substance for illusion, truth for comfort, and protection for power? They said it was about beautification, that the fire hydrants clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic, that the HOA had a vision, a clean, uniform, manicured reality where nothing disrupted the symmetry of the sidewalks or the curated charm of the cul-de-sac. But beneath that vision was something darker, something more insidious, the illusion of control. I remember walking past those hydrants every day, never thinking twice about their presence, until one day they were gone, removed quietly, surgically, like an inconvenient truth. And Karen, yes, that Karen, stood proudly at the HOA meeting, waving her printed petition like a flag of victory, her voice trembling with righteous conviction. She spoke of property values, of neighborhood pride, of visual harmony. Not once did she mention fire safety. Not once did anyone ask why the hydrants were there in the first place. Because in this world, appearances matter more than function. The HOA wasn't just a governing body. It was a mirror reflecting our collective obsession with control, with order, with the suppression of chaos. But chaos doesn't disappear just because you paint over it. It waits. It simmers. It watches. And when you remove the safeguards, it doesn't hesitate. That's the thing about fire. It doesn't care about your landscaping. It doesn't care about your bylaws. It doesn't care that Karen thought red metal cylinders were visually aggressive. Fire is the great equalizer. It exposes the fragility of our systems, the hollowness of our rules, the arrogance of our assumptions. And yet, we build these communities, HOA-run, tightly regulated, obsessively curated, as if we can outsmart nature, outmaneuver entropy, outvote reality. But reality isn't democratic. It doesn't attend meetings. It doesn't sign petitions. It just arrives. And when it does, it burns through illusions like paper. I watched the clubhouse go up in flames from my kitchen window. I saw the smoke rise, thick and unapologetic, curling into the sky like a question no one wanted to answer. Where were the hydrants? Where were the hoses? Where was the protection we thought we had? Gone. Removed. Erased. Because someone decided that safety was unsightly. That function was offensive. That reality was inconvenient. And we let it happen. We nodded. We voted. We complied. Because we believed in the illusion. We believed that order was enough. That rules could replace wisdom. That Karen knew best. But she didn't. And now the clubhouse is ash. And the illusion? It's gone too. It didn't start with fire. It started with a voice, sharp, insistent, dressed in the language of concern. Karen wasn't elected. She emerged, like mold in a forgotten corner. She grew in the silence left by apathy. She spoke often, loudly, and with conviction. Not wisdom, not empathy, just conviction. And in a world where most people are too tired, too distracted, too disillusioned to challenge conviction, she became a leader. The HOA didn't resist her. They absorbed her. They gave her a seat, a vote, a platform. Not because she was right, but because she was relentless. And in that quiet suburban theater, where meetings are held under fluorescent lights and decisions are made with passive nods, Karen became law. She didn't need a badge. She had a clipboard. She didn't need evidence. She had opinions. And the HOA, built on the illusion of community, became her echo chamber. They nodded. They agreed. They enabled. Because power doesn't always wear a crown. It often wears a cardigan and carries a binder. Karen's rise wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. She filed complaints. She cited bylaws. She weaponized order. And slowly, the neighborhood bent to her will. The hydrants were just one casualty. Before them, it was lawn ornaments, then porch furniture, then the color of mailboxes. Each decision cloaked in the language of standards, uniformity, property value. But beneath it all was control, a need to shape the world into something predictable, sterile, manageable. And the HOA, designed to protect the neighborhood, became a tool for domination. They stopped asking questions. They started enforcing preferences. And when Karen proposed removing the fire hydrants, claiming they were visual pollution, no one challenged her. Because by then, she wasn't just a neighbor. She was the system. And systems don't apologize. They don't reflect. They execute. So the hydrants disappeared, not with debate, but with quiet approval. And the neighborhood, lulled into compliance, didn't notice or didn't care. Because when power is dressed as order, it feels safe. Until it isn't. Until the clubhouse burns. Until the illusion collapses. Until people ask, how did this happen? And the answer is simple. It happened one unchecked decision at a time. It happened because we let Karen speak louder than reason. Because we let the HOA become a mirror for control instead of a shield for safety. Because we confused silence with agreement. And now, the flames have spoken louder than any meeting ever did. It started like any other evening. Quiet, predictable, wrapped in the soft hum of suburban comfort. The clubhouse was hosting a small gathering, nothing extravagant, just neighbors sipping wine and exchanging pleasantries under dim lights and polite laughter. And then, without warning, the fire began. No dramatic explosion, no cinematic cue, just smoke, curling from the back wall like a whisper of something long denied. At first, people didn't believe it. They stared confused, as if reality had glitched, as if fire couldn't exist here, in this place of rules and regulations and HOA-approved landscaping. But fire doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for a quorum. It spreads, fast, ruthless, indifferent. Within minutes, the clubhouse was engulfed. The laughter turned to screams. The wine glasses shattered on the floor. And outside, neighbors gathered helpless, watching their illusion burn. Someone shouted, "Where's a hydrant?" Another ran for a hose, only to find it too short, too weak, too late. The fire trucks arrived, but they couldn't connect. There was nothing to connect to. The hydrants were gone, removed, erased. And in that moment, the neighborhood realized what it had sacrificed. Not just metal and water pressure, but safety, sanity, sense. Karen stood there too, silent. Her clipboard nowhere in sight. Her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open, as if trying to rewrite the narrative in real time. But the flames didn't care. They didn't pause for her justification. They consumed everything. The walls, the furniture, the carefully curated decor chosen by committee. And with each crackle, each collapse, the fire exposed the truth. That control is not protection. That order is not immunity. That the HOA's obsession with aesthetics had left them defenseless. I watched it all unfold from my porch, frozen, unable to look away. The fire was more than heat. It was revelation. It burned through the lies we told ourselves, the comfort we clung to, the silence we maintained. It was the reckoning we didn't know we needed. And as the flames died down, leaving only ash and smoke and the bitter taste of regret, the neighborhood stood in stunned silence. No one spoke. Because what could they say? That they voted for this? That they let it happen? That they believed Karen when she said hydrants were unnecessary? The fire didn't just destroy a building. It destroyed the illusion. It forced us to confront the consequences of our choices, our complicity, our cowardice. And in that moment, the neighborhood changed. Not visibly, not immediately, but something cracked, something shifted. Because once you've seen the truth in flames, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't unburn what's been burned. The fire was gone, but the smoke lingered in the air, in the minds, in the language people used to explain what had happened. The clubhouse was reduced to rubble, and yet the neighborhood didn't erupt in outrage. It recoiled, quietly, elegantly, as if grief were a stain to be managed. The HOA issued a statement. We are deeply saddened by the unfortunate incident. Not a fire, not a failure. An incident. The word hung in the air like a euphemism for guilt. Karen, too, spoke. She expressed shock, concern, and confidence in the HOA's process. She didn't mention the hydrants. She didn't mention her petition. She didn't mention the vote. And no one asked her to, because denial is easier than reckoning. It's smoother. It fits better into the HOA newsletter. The neighbors returned to their routines. They planted flowers. They repainted fences. They held a candlelight vigil, not for truth, but for comfort. And in that vigil, no one spoke of responsibility. No one asked, why did we let this happen? Instead, they asked, how we move forward, as if forward were possible without reflection, as if healing could happen without honesty. The HOA proposed rebuilding the clubhouse, a new design, more modern, more fire-resistant. Irony dripped from every blueprint. But no one laughed, because laughter requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement requires courage, and courage was in short supply. Karen remained on the board, her influence intact, her authority undiminished, because in the architecture of denial, accountability is the first casualty. People whispered, of course, in kitchens, on walks, in hushed tones. Wasn't it Karen's idea? Didn't the HOA approve it? But whispers don't change systems. They preserve them. They create the illusion of dissent without the risk of confrontation. And so the neighborhood settled into a new normal, one where the fire was a fluke, not a failure, where the hydrants were forgotten, not erased, where Karen was misunderstood, not responsible. And in that silence, the real damage took root, not in the clubhouse, but in the psyche of the community, in the way people learned to look away, to rationalize, to rewrite, because denial is not just a refusal to see, it's a refusal to feel the weight of complicity, the sting of truth, the discomfort of change. And so the neighborhood moved on, but not forward, just away from the fire, away from the truth, away from a moment that could have been a turning point. And in that retreat, they built something worse than ash. They built a narrative, one where everything was fine, one where Karen was just a concerned citizen, one where the HOA was doing its best, one where the fire was nobody's fault. And in that story, the hydrants never existed. We say we value safety. We build fences, install alarms, buy insurance. We teach our children to look both ways, to wear helmets, to avoid strangers. But what happens when the very systems designed to protect us become compromised by aesthetics, by ego, by illusion? The hydrants weren't just metal fixtures. They were symbols. Symbols of preparedness, of humility, of the quiet acknowledgement that chaos can strike anywhere. But in Karen's world, safety was negotiable. It was subject to taste. It was filtered through the lens of visual harmony. And the HOA, in its quest for order, agreed. They chose symmetry over substance. They chose appearance over resilience. And in doing so, they revealed something unsettling, that safety, in this context, was never priority. Control was, predictability was, the illusion of perfection was. And that illusion demanded sacrifice, not of money, not of effort, but of logic, of foresight, of the simple truth that fire hydrants save lives. So why did no one speak up? Why did no one challenge the decision? Because safety is often invisible until it fails. It's the absence of disaster. It's the quiet hum of systems working in the background. And when those systems are removed, the silence remains until it's shattered by sirens and smoke. The neighborhood didn't protect the hydrants because they didn't see them as protection. They saw them as clutter, as disruption, as a threat to the curated image they had built. And that image, clean, orderly, HOA approved, was sacred. More sacred than preparedness, more sacred than reality. And so the hydrants were removed, and the fire came. And the question remains, what do we choose to protect? Our homes? Our neighbors? Our comfort? Or our illusions? Because every choice reveals a philosophy. Every vote, every petition, every silence is a declaration of values. And in this case, the values were clear. Conformity over caution, aesthetics over action, Karen over common sense. But safety isn't beautiful. It's practical. It's messy. It's visible. And sometimes it clashes with the landscape. But it's necessary. And when we forget that, when we prioritize the look of safety over its substance, we invite disaster. Not just physical, but philosophical, because the fire didn't just burn wood and drywall. It burned through the idea that we are rational, that we are prepared, that we are wise. It exposed the fragility of our choices, the hollowness of our priorities, the danger of mistaking control for care. And now, as the neighborhood rebuilds, the question lingers. Will they protect what matters, or will they protect the illusion? The fire was not just an event. It was a mirror, a brutal, unflinching reflection of who we are when comfort collides with consequence. It stripped away the layers, the bylaws, the landscaping, the polite smiles, and exposed the raw truth beneath, that we are terrified of disorder, addicted to control, and willing to sacrifice reality for the illusion of safety. The hydrants were never the problem. They were the warning, the red flags, literally, standing in plain sight, reminding us that danger exists, that chaos is real, that nature doesn't care about our HOA-approved aesthetics. But we didn't want to see that. We wanted clean lines, matching fences, curated perfection. And in that pursuit, we erased the very things that protected us. The fire didn't just consume wood and drywall. It consumed our denial. It burned through the narrative we had built, the one where Karen was just a concerned neighbor, where the HOA was just doing its job, where the community was united in purpose. That narrative is ash now, and in its place is a question. Who are we, really? Are we rational beings, capable of reflection and change? Or are we creatures of habit, clinging to comfort even as the flames rise? The truth is uncomfortable. It always is. It demands that we confront our complicity, our silence, our choices. It asks us to look at Karen, not as a villain, but as a symptom, a product of a system that rewards control over compassion, procedure over wisdom, appearance over substance. And it asks us to look at ourselves, not as victims, but as participants. Because we voted, we nodded, we let it happen. The fire revealed that our greatest threat isn't chaos. It's our refusal to prepare for it. It's our belief that rules can replace reason, that order can substitute for empathy, that silence is safer than confrontation. But silence doesn't stop fires. Hydrants do. And when we remove them, literally or metaphorically, we invite destruction. The clubhouse is gone, but the lesson remains. It lingers in the air, in the scorched earth, in the eyes of those who watched it burn. And it whispers, never again. Not because we fear fire, but because we finally understand what it reveals. That safety is not passive. That truth is not convenient. That community is not conformity. And that the hardest truths are the ones we must choose to see before the flames force us to.